Hey guys, tonight we dive into the dark, deadly, and far from glamorous reality of medieval assassins. You've probably pictured them before, hooded, graceful, whispering through shadows with a dagger in one hand and destiny in the other. But forget the video games and the Hollywood montages. What you're about to step into is a lot more squalid, a lot more stressful, and far, far smellier. Before you settle in, hit that like button and subscribe, only if you're into this kind of storytelling. And hey, drop a comment to let me know where you're watching from and what time it is over there. I always find it exciting to know that people are joining us from all over the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're lying on a straw-stuffed mattress that smells like wet goat. It's not even yours. You stole it from a barn last week and you're still hoping no one notices. Your boots are cracked. Your cloak is full of holes. You haven't bathed in 2 months because the last time you did, someone stole your knife. But that's not your biggest problem. Your biggest problem is that someone just slid a coin purse across a table and whispered a name. And now you're thinking, do I say yes? You didn't grow up dreaming of this. No one did. Kids didn't scribble in the dirt about becoming assassins. They wanted to be knights, priests, maybe even merchants if they had ambition. Becoming an assassin was the end of a long series of bad decisions, or more often, bad luck. You didn't apply for this job. You landed here because life chewed you up, spat you out, and left you crouched in a rain barrel with a rusty dagger wondering what went wrong. Hollywood gives you smooth-talking charmers in leather armor, with an origin story and a cool tattoo. But the reality is more like, hi, I'm Jeff. I used to steal bread until I got caught. Now I strangle people for money. Most assassins were poor. Not tight-budget poor. No family, no home-eating mice poor. Some were former soldiers too broken to rejoin the army. Others were petty thieves who got good at not being caught. 1 or 2 were born into noble houses, sure, but only the ones who fell very, very far from grace. If you had a goat to your name, you were in the upper management class. You didn't do the stabbing, you ordered it. And here's the real kicker. There was no fame in it, no glory, no song. Just one job at a time with pay that barely covered your next meal, assuming, of course, you survived. The average career span for a medieval assassin was somewhere between one bad night and, oops, your first kill? Probably messy, probably personal. Maybe it was revenge. Maybe someone offered you a silver piece to make a problem go away, and you were hungry enough to say yes. You thought it'd be quick. It wasn't. There was blood, screaming. The realization that you hadn't thought through the part after, the stabbing, and somehow you didn't get caught. So you did it again. Before long, people started coming to you with names and pouches of coins, not because you were skilled, because you were quiet. You were anonymous. You looked like someone who could disappear. And in this world, disappearing was your only real talent. That's when it hits you. This is your life now. You're not a thief. You're not a hero. You're a shadow. A name whispered in taverns. The kind of person people don't make eye contact with at market. Even other criminals avoid you. Thieves can be charming. You're the one with that look. The dead-eyed stare of someone who slept in ditches and dreams of not dreaming anymore. Historians still argue whether medieval assassins worked alone or in loose networks. Some whisper about shadowy guilds or religious orders. And maybe in rare cases that was true. But for most it was just survival. No training, no rituals, no honor. Just instinct, hunger, and a list of things you couldn't afford to care about anymore, like morality. You don't kill for the thrill. You kill because it's that or starve. Or worse, go back to prison, where they remember you from last time and now the guards use your face for practice, so here you are. So here you, sitting at the edge of town, watching a manor house flickering in candlelight, weighing your odds. You have a blade, a half plan, and not much else. If you're lucky, you get in and out without waking the dogs. If you're not, well, there's always another assassin waiting to take your place. You take a breath, adjust your cloak, and step into the dark. You're crouched under a bush, staring at a stone wall, and suddenly it hits you. No one ever taught you how to do this. There's no instruction manual for creeping through aristocratic gardens without being mauled by a goose. There's no assassin academy where a wise lantern-jawed mentor hands you a cloak and says, "Ah, yes, the silent arts. Let me show you how to not die." No. What you have is trial and error. Heavy on the error. Your first training session, probably, involved trying to sneak into a bakery through the back and getting chased off by a 12-year-old with a rolling pin. But eventually you learned. You learned that people rarely look up, that dogs bark at everyone but bite the ones who hesitate, that a locked door isn't a wall, it's a question mark waiting to be solved. And you learn fast, or you stop learning permanently. There was no guild. Not for you. Maybe in some distant city under layers of candlelit mystique there's a brotherhood of shadowy figures who meet once a month and hand out daggers like party favors. But you got a few tips from a drunk thief and a scar from trying to scale a wall with your bootlaces tied together. You don't even know if you're good. You only know you're not dead. Yet. Most assassins learned through observation. You watched guards walk their rounds and memorized every pause, every cough. You figured out that the third torch on the left flickered because of a draft. Good for slipping in. You noticed that nobles love wine and hate checking their locks. And you definitely learned that windows on the second floor are somehow always left open. Maybe they thought no one would be dumb enough to climb up there. Joke's on them. Weapons. Training. Laughable. You found a dagger in a ditch and kept it because it fit your hand and didn't snap in half. You've never held a sword, and frankly you don't want to. Too flashy. Too loud. You'd rather carry a thin knife, a bit of rope, and something vaguely sharp that could double as a toothbrush in a pinch. Historians still argue whether medieval assassins had access to specialized weapons. Sure, some might have used garrots, or hollowed-out walking sticks. But more often than not, your toolkit came from whatever you could steal, scavenge, or carve in the dark. That hairpin in your pocket? Multi-purpose. So is the belt buckle. And let's not even talk about what you once did with a spoon. The truth is, everything you know about this job came from not dying the last time. You learn the sound a wooden stair makes when it's about to betray you. You know how to breathe through your nose to avoid wheezing in the dark. You figure out that wind direction can carry your scent to guard dogs. And you experiment with rolling in mud to fix that. Spoiler, it only sort of works. Poison? That came later. And badly. You once spent an afternoon brewing a concoction out of mushrooms and old herbs only to paralyze a squirrel. When you tried it on a guard, he just burped and took a nap. You spent the next week coughing up regret. But it wasn't all disasters. Eventually, you found your rhythm. You stopped slipping on mossy stones. You timed your movements to bells, and thunder and poorly tuned lutes in taverns. You didn't become graceful exactly, but you stopped embarrassing yourself every time you tried to sneak under a window. Sometimes you got lucky. You met a mercenary who showed you how to hold your knife so it didn't twist in your grip. Or you watched a thief escape through a rooftop hatch and decided that was worth remembering. If someone took pity on you and offered advice, you listened like it was Holy Scripture, because this wasn't about style. It was about survival. Eventually, you stopped waiting for a teacher and started trusting your instincts. You made mistakes, sure. Once you nearly strangled the wrong guy. Another time, you got chased 2 towns over by a man whose only crime was looking like your target in candlelight. But each blunder taught you something. You learned not to approach from the east if the wind carried your scent. You learned to watch for birds, they scatter before guards do. You learned to trust the little hairs on the back of your neck when something felt wrong. Those hairs have saved your life more than steel ever has. No lessons, no lectures. Just bruises and shadows and the slow, creeping understanding that this is what learning feels like when failure means dying in a gutter. So now you stand at the edge of a courtyard, knife in hand, heart pounding like a drum played by a nervous child. There's a guard by the door. A lantern sways overhead. Somewhere inside, your target breathes quietly in the dark, unaware that a nameless shape is watching from the ivy. You take a breath. You move. And you pray, not for strength or mercy, but for silence. You've made it inside. Past the wall, past the guard, past the dog that thankfully preferred sniffing the firewood instead of your boot. You're in. And now comes the worst part, the waiting. Because assassins don't strike in bursts of passion. You don't leap dramatically from a chandelier. You crouch in corners and wait for a moment that may never come. You listen to old beams creak, to mice rustle in the straw, to your own breath threatening to betray you with every exhale. You are patience in a cloak. And while you wait, you think. Mostly about the job. Sometimes about food. Occasionally, about whether this was a terrible idea. And always about the money. Ah yes, the coin purse. That heavy jangle that brought you here, dangled in front of you like a promise. That's the fantasy. Do one job, get paid, vanish into comfort. A hot bath, a warm meal, maybe even a mattress that doesn't crunch when you lie down. But the truth? That coin purse is bait. Most of the time, you get half up front. If you're lucky. The other half comes when the job is done, which is noble speak for maybe if we feel like it, assuming you don't mess up or make us nervous. The payment terms are vague, the trust non-existent, and the risk? Let's just say it's rarely worth the silver. Historians still argue whether assassins were ever truly paid professionals or more like disposable tools. The evidence points to the latter. You were cheap, you were deniable, you were expendable. The job wasn't meant to build a career. It was meant to be your last desperate act before vanishing. Sometimes the client disappears before you can even return. Other times you get paid in copper instead of silver and a shrug to go with it. Once you got paid with a loaf of moldy bread and a pat on the back. Another time, they sent a man to follow you home with a knife, just in case you developed a conscience, and on the rare occasion they do pay in full, it's never enough. Not for what you endured, not for the risk, not for the hours spent motionless under a table listening to a nobleman chew louder than any human should. Definitely not for the 3 days you hid in a hay cart because you left a single footprint, too close to the kitchen door. You'd think you could renegotiate. You can't. There's no HR department for assassins. No one to complain to when your employer tries to backstab you with a literal backstabber. And sometimes, just for fun, they never intended to pay you at all. The whole contract was a trap. You're told to kill a corrupt lord. You sneak in. You strike. And suddenly the corrupt lord turns out to be a decoy surrounded by armed guards who've been waiting for you. You've just walked into a state-sponsored sting operation. Congratulations. Your reward is a swift execution or, if they're feeling theatrical, a public hanging with free admission for the townsfolk. It's not like you can take it to court. Excuse me, Your Honor, but I'd like to report a breach of assassin-client confidentiality. The only legal system you fall under is the one that wants your head on a spike. So you learn to be cautious. You demand more up front. You memorize faces. You scout escape routes before you even accept the job. You stop trusting smiles. You watch the hands, not the eyes. And most importantly, you never ever return to the same client twice. But despite everything, the lies, the betrayal, the sheer exhaustion, you keep doing it. Why? Because sometimes they pay. Sometimes the pouch is real. Sometimes it's heavy. Sometimes it hits your palm with a sound that makes all the bruises feel a little less deep. You take that silver and you run. Not walk. Not casually meander. You run. Because now, every second you're still in this town is a second too long. Someone might recognize you. Someone might remember that strange man who didn't finish his ale. Someone might talk. So you vanish. You disappear into woods or shadowy roads. You change your name again. You bury the coins beneath a rock you'll probably never find again. And you spend the night in a barn pretending this will all be over soon. But you know it won't be. Because once you've taken the money, you've already accepted what comes with it. The fear, the silence, and the knowledge that no one wants to see you succeed. Not even the person who hired you. You close your eyes. You listen to the coins jingle softly in the pouch beside you. And for just a moment, you let yourself believe that maybe this time, it was worth it. Just for a moment. You wake up to the sound of your own breathing and the realization that once again you're alive. Not exactly thriving, but upright, mobile, and unstabbed. That's the bar now. You check your belongings. Dagger? Still here. Rope? Slightly damp, but usable. Coin pouch? Still hidden under the moldy floorboard. You're practically a walking success story. Now comes the part that really separates you from the poets and knights of your age. Your gear. Not enchanted, not elegant, and definitely not uniform. Your kit is a patchwork of luck, theft, and creative desperation. Forget the fantasy novels. There's no retractable wrist blade, no smoke bombs made from crushed gemstones and dragon farts, no magical ring that turns you invisible when the guards look bored. What you have is a knife you found in a ditch and a cloak that looks like it's been used as a dish rag during a famine. Your dagger? Not curved or ceremonial, not named. It's short, rusted in one spot, and sharp enough if you squint. You test the edge with your thumb. Still does the job. You've had worse. Once you had to use the broken handle of a spoon. Let's not talk about that night. Historians still argue whether assassins developed specialized weapons or just used whatever was at hand. Truth is, the most reliable weapons weren't the fanciest. They were the ones that didn't rattle when you moved. No, one cared how ornate your blade was if it clanged against your belt and woke up the guy you were sneaking past. You also carry rope, sometimes to climb, sometimes to choke, sometimes just because it looks suspicious and scares people when you unwind it too slowly. But knots? Knots are tricky. You've definitely spent a tense moment or two muttering, "Wait, which loop goes? Under again?" While your target stood groggily in his nightgown watching. You have poison. Or, well, you had poison. That little corked vial of hope and error finally ran out. Made from crushed herbs, flower petals, and whatever your friend swore was definitely wolfsbane, probably. Worked once. Maybe. Hard to tell. He already looked sick. If you're lucky, and I mean found a gold coin in a latrine lucky, you might have something fancier. A garrote, a weighted sap, maybe a tiny crossbow someone forgot to lock up. But most nights you're trusting your blade, your instincts, and the fact that nobles sleep very, very deeply after drinking too much mead. Clothing? An assassin's wardrobe isn't sleek. You dress like a sick monk, a tired farmer, or a goat. Herder with something to hide. The goal isn't intimidation, it's invisibility. You want to blend in so completely that even your own reflection questions your presence. But there's a problem. You smell. Not heroic musk or rugged danger. You smell like someone who hasn't seen soap since the last plague. And that smell? It lingers. It's hard to sneak past guards when they suddenly stop and whisper, "Did you smell that?" You try. You wash in streams. You rub herbs under your arms. Once you even borrowed a noble's perfume. But the scent of lavender death clashed poorly with your general aura of crime. Still, you adapt. You tuck your tools into folds. You line your boots with cloth to muffle footsteps. You wrap your knife in wool to stop it from knocking against your hip when you run. You carry a small piece of wax to dull, squeaky hinges. It's the little things. Always the little things. And maybe most importantly, you carry silence like it's part of your gear. You practice stepping between creaky floorboards. You learn which windows open with a push versus a squeal. You figure out that candlelight makes everything look more dramatic, which is why you blow it out first. There's no polishing, no sharpening sessions over a fire with inspirational flute music. You don't admire your kit. You fear it. Because if it fails, if your rope snaps, your blade sticks, your cloak catches on a nail, that's the end. There is no retry. So, you take inventory every morning. You whisper to your gear like a gambler to his dice. Don't fail me today. Because no matter how many times you've done this, it never gets easier. The tools change. The hands don't. And when the time comes, when the name is whispered and the purse slides across the table, you'll reach into your coat. You'll touch that familiar, slightly chipped blade, and you'll go to work. The door creaks as you push it open with your shoulder. Slow, steady, deliberate. You've already memorized the floor plan, at least what you could glean from whispers and bad drawings on tavern napkins. The room is dark, but not quiet. There's The soft snore of someone important sleeping behind a tapestry-lined wall. Someone with a title. Someone with too many enemies and not enough humility. Your target. They never pay you to kill simple folk. No one's hiring you to deal with Tom the sleepy cobbler or Agnes who sells carrots. No. Your contracts involve people with guards, influence, and moats. People who eat on silver plates and lock their doors with keys the size of your forearm. They're always paranoid. Always watched, always protected. You don't just sneak into a house, you breach a fortress, because if they're worth killing, they're also very, very hard to kill. First come the guards. You've watched them already. You know which one limps. Which one leaves his post to relieve himself just before dawn. You know the one who drinks too much and laughs too loud, making him the easiest to slide past while he's busy telling the same story for the third night in a row. And let's not forget the animals, dogs, always dogs. You once met a client who said, "There's just one small, quiet hound, he's harmless." That hound chased you across 2 courtyards and bit you in a place you'd really rather not talk about. Then there's the castle itself. Medieval nobles. Didn't go small on defense. They built walls thick enough to hide a dinner party inside. They dug moats filled with cold water and things that may or may not bite. They built towers and narrow staircases and archery slits designed specifically to make you regret everything. You once tried to climb in through a window, only to find yourself staring into a room full of sleeping servants. And let me tell you, no one screams quite like a startled chambermaid at 2 in the morning. You ended up hiding under a table for 3 hours while they tried to figure out if they were being haunted or robbed. Historians still debate how accessible nobles were to common attackers. Many claim the multiple layers of security made assassination nearly impossible. But history is full of dead nobles and suspicious accidents, which suggests that someone like you, was getting in. And even if you get past the walls and the guards and the angry hound, you still have the house staff to worry about. Cooks, butlers. That one very nosy scribe who always seems to be in the wrong hallway at the worst time. These people may not be trained fighters, but they're observant. And they love to talk. One off glance, one out-of-place tunic, one moment, where you forget the name of the cook's cat, and suddenly someone's asking questions. And in this job, questions are a luxury you can't afford. Then there's the feast. You think a noble inebriated at dinner might be an easy mark. But no, because everyone's watching. Everyone's drunk. And drunk people are unpredictable. Once, a jester stared at you for 20 minutes straight because he swore you looked like his uncle. That was a bad night, so instead you wait. You hide in wine cellars. You lurk in dumbwaiters. You curl up in linen closets praying no one needs extra sheets. You watch for patterns because even nobles are creatures of habit. They like their routines, same drink, same time, same slippers, same spot. And when that moment comes, when the last guard stifles a yawn, when the door creaks just enough, you move. Quick, quiet, clean. That's the dream anyway. In reality, it's rarely clean. Sometimes they wake up. Sometimes they fight back. Once a baron tried to bribe you mid-stabbing. "Double it," he gasped. You paused, considered, then finished the job. Not because you were loyal, but because you knew he didn't actually have double. You'd checked his books 2 days earlier. Every job is a puzzle. Some you solve with steel, some with silence, some with a well-placed nudge down a staircase while no one's looking. And when it's done, you don't linger. There's no time for reflection or poetic last words. You do what you came for. Then you run, because the noise is coming. Someone always hears something. Someone always suspects. And no matter how perfect the kill, the moment you step away, the countdown begins. So you slide into the shadows, past the guards who will swear they saw nothing, past the dog who now snores with his paws twitching, past the same servant girl who almost caught you last time and is, thankfully, still too sleepy to notice. You leave the house behind. And as you cross the courtyard under the cover of stars, you don't smile, you don't gloat, you just breathe. Because you're not out yet. You're back in town. Or what passes for a town. 2 muddy streets, 1 tavern, and a suspiciously lopsided chapel. You're hunched over a cup of something warm that vaguely resembles soup, but might just be water that once met a vegetable. You're listening to the clink of mugs, the groan of floorboards, and trying to look like someone who's just passing through. And for the love of all things sharp, you are trying not to look suspicious. But that's hard, because while everyone else talks and drinks and stares into the fire like it owes them rent, you're watching the door. Always. Every creak, every silhouette. You've picked the corner seat with your back to the wall. You've memorized the exits. And yes, your dagger is within reach, tucked behind your belt under a cloak that probably still smells like chimney soot and moral ambiguity. See, blending in isn't just about clothes. It's about the way you move. The way you sit, just slouched enough to look tired, not tensed like a trap ready to spring. It's the way you hold your cup with your non-dominant hand because your dagger hand stays free. It's the way you glance, not stare, at anyone with a sword longer than their sense of humor. Your disguise? Not exactly flawless. You're wearing peasant rags that don't quite match. The boots came from a corpse and the tunic from a washing line you may or may not have borrowed permanently. It's oversized and itchy, but at least it hides the fact that you're concealing half a toolkit beneath it. Historians still debate whether medieval assassins used disguises effectively or whether their efforts were mostly theatrical. The consensus? If you didn't look like you belonged, you didn't last long. Because suspicion wasn't earned, it was assigned. And people in small towns? Oh, they notice. That limp you faked last night? You'd better remember it today. That accent you tried on when buying bread? Better hope no one asks you where Overchester is and what crops they grow there. One time you pretended to be a wandering monk. Wore a robe 2 sizes too big and muttered fake blessings over goats. Worked great until someone asked which monastery you were from, and your only answer was the quiet one on the hill with all the praying. You got out of that one with a fake coughing fit and an emergency sprint through a pig pen. Masks? Not common. A mask made you look like you were either hiding something or going to a costume festival that no one else was invited to. In a world where illness, leprosy, and witchcraft were common accusations, covering your face was an open invitation to be stoned in the town square. So instead, you rely on layering, dirt, misdirection, hair over the eyes, a hood that you adjust when no one's looking. If someone presses you for your name, you've got 3 or 4 on hand. Brother Tobias, Lucas the fence, Davin the roof mender, each with a half-plausible story and an escape plan that starts with throw chair, run left. You keep your voice low, your head bowed, not because you're humble, but because eye contact invites questions, and questions invite someone shouting, "Rah, hey, didn't I see you sneaking out of Lord Elric's study at midnight?" Which, yes, they did. But you were hoping they forgot. Even if your disguise works, you're not home free. Because now, you have to stay in character. You're a traveling merchant? Better be able to name 3 spices and pretend you know what saffron smells like. You're a carpenter? Know your way around a wooden beam and try not to call a chisel a short knife for wood. And the hardest part? You have to pretend you don't notice the guards. The ones with the bored eyes and the sharpened pikes. The ones who walk too slowly past your table. The ones who suddenly show interest in everyone's name, especially yours. You give them your best innocent look. You smile, just enough to seem harmless, not so much that it looks like you're trying. You say you're just passing through. You were heading west, but the river washed out the bridge. You heard there might be work at the mill. You lie, not because you enjoy it, but because lying is survival, because honesty doesn't fit under your cloak. And when you finally slip out the back, cloak pulled tight, boots silent on the cobblestone, you feel it again, that familiar rush. Not adrenaline, not pride, relief. Because for one more day, your name isn't being shouted in the town square. No one's tied you to the stake. You weren't the masked stranger found skulking in the bishop's laundry, not yet anyway. It's raining. Again. Because of course it is. You're walking a narrow forest path, boots sinking into mud that threatens to claim your left shoe every other step. Your cloak is soaked, heavy as guilt, and you're not entirely sure the water dripping down your neck is just rain. It might be regret, or someone else's roof leaking through memory. Either way, you're alone. That's the point. Being an assassin isn't just about knives and shadows. It's about isolation. You don't have partners. You don't have allies. You don't even have friends. At least not the kind who'd help you bury a body or carry a secret to the grave. You have contacts. You have whisperers. You have a fence who knows not to ask questions, and an old woman in the next village over who sells you tinctures, and once warned you never to sleep facing north. You've never asked why. You don't want to know. No guild. No brotherhood. No Order of the Shadowed Moon. If you've heard of one, it's probably just drunk thieves bragging at the inn. Real assassins? They work alone. Because in your line of work, the fewer people who know your name, the longer you keep breathing. Even, your clients don't know much. Most of the time it's a middleman, a letter slipped under a door, a mark on a wall, a pouch of silver tucked inside a hollowed-out loaf of bread. You do the job, and if they're smart, they never speak of it again. And you never even think of it again. You can't afford to. People ask if it's lonely, but the truth is, you don't remember what not lonely feels like. Companionship? Laughable. You tried once. A girl in a coastal village who sold fish and laughed at your jokes. You stayed a week. Thought about staying longer. Then someone recognized you. Just a glance. Just a flicker of familiarity in the eye of a traveling merchant. You vanished that night. You didn't even say goodbye. Historians still argue whether isolation was a requirement or a consequence of the profession. But the end result is the same. You sleep alone. You eat alone. You keep your back to the wall because even shadows have teeth. You don't settle down. You can't. One mistake, one old contact recognizing your gait, and your whole world unravels like a badly tied rope. Even fellow criminals keep their distance. Thieves may joke with each other. Smugglers may drink together. But you're that person who makes people disappear. You're the one they cross the street to avoid, not because you've wronged them, but because you might. And if you ever do try to talk about it, about the silence, the fear, the weird ache in your ribs that isn't quite a wound, you're met with blank stares or forced laughter. No one wants to hear how hard it is to sleep after strangling a bishop with his own rosary beads, assuming you even slept at all. You don't get to confess. You don't get to unburden. There's no priest for people like you. No warm fireside chat where you say, "I once snuck through a library and accidentally murdered the wrong uncle." There's just silence, and mud, and the sound of your own footsteps in a world that doesn't want to know you exist. At the inn, you sit in the darkest corner. You drink just enough to look relaxed, never enough to blur your senses. You eat what you can afford. You sleep lightly. You never stay more than one night. And when the innkeeper asks for your name, you give one you haven't used in a while, one that feels like it belonged to someone else, because it did. You've had so many names you've forgotten your real one, if you even had one. Names are tools now, like daggers. Use them, then toss them when they go dull. Tonight, your brother, Lucas, a wandering herbalist with a bad cough and a satchel full of carefully useless advice. Mint is good for the joints, you mumbled to the stable boy. He nods. He'll forget you by morning. Hopefully. You sleep with one eye open. Dagger, beneath your pillow. You wake every hour. You listen for the shift of boots on floorboards, the creak of stairs, the sharp intake of breath that might mean someone just recognized you. And when dawn creeps in through the cracks in the wall, you're already gone. No goodbyes, no farewells. Just a pair of boot prints in the dirt and a chair that's still warm. You live like a shadow pretending to be a man, and some days even you start to forget the difference. You didn't mean to freeze, but your hand won't stop shaking. The dagger is in your grip, your breath is shallow, and you're crouched in the corner of a nobleman's study, staring at the back of your target's head. This is it. The moment. The strike. You've planned it, you've timed it, you've done this before, and yet, you freeze. Maybe it's the light flickering from the fireplace, throwing shadows that feel like they're watching you. Maybe it's the way the noble shifted in his chair and muttered a name that isn't yours but sounds close enough to gut you. Or maybe it's the child, his daughter, wandering in unexpectedly to say goodnight, clutching a stuffed rabbit and asking about stars. You wait. You don't move. You press yourself against the cold stone and pray the child leaves. She does. Eventually. But the moment is gone, and now your hands won't listen to you. And guess what? Now you're dead. Not literally. Not yet. But inside, you've already failed. Because in your world, failure doesn't come with a disappointed sigh or a better luck next time. It comes with ropes, fire, and iron. Lots of iron. Missing. The kill isn't just a mistake. It's a public service announcement. The nobles don't let a failed assassin fade away. They make examples. Big ones. With banners and town criers. You become a cautionary tale before your body's even cold. You've seen it. The scaffold. The crowd. The guards with bored expressions. The hangman who sharpens his tools while eating. A carrot. You know how it ends. You've whispered names of people who got caught. Colin Vetra, the one with the limp who always hummed before a strike. Gone. Historians still argue whether medieval punishments were truly as brutal as described, or whether some accounts were exaggerated to scare potential criminals. But you've seen enough to know. If anything, the stories go easy on the details. Sometimes it's not even the guards you have to worry about. Sometimes it's your client, because failure makes you a liability. Suddenly, you're someone who knows too much and can't be trusted to stay quiet. And in this business, people don't wait for you to talk. They assume you might and act accordingly. So your client, the one who gave you that silver and told you to make it look clean, is already hiring someone else. Not to finish the job. To finish you. There are no second chances. No do-overs. You can't knock on the manor door the next day and say, "Apologies, bit of stage fright, mind if I try again?" You get one shot, one heartbeat, one perfect, silent, ghost-like moment. And if you miss, you run. But where? The guards now know your face. Your fake name is probably already etched into a wanted poster. Your escape route? Compromised. That's stable. Boy you bribed? Turns out he wanted more than a coin. He wanted to impress the captain of the guard. You've been sold out for a sausage and a warm blanket. Now you're sprinting through alleyways with your hood half off, your foot bleeding from a badly landed jump, and every dog in the district barking like it's their birthday. Even if you do escape, you're not safe. You're never safe because failure doesn't wash off. You carry it. In your gait. In your silence. In the way you flinch when someone asks if you've traveled far. And deep down you carry something worse. Shame. Because this was your job. Your one skill. The one thing you were supposed to be good at. And you blew it. You weren't fast enough. Quiet enough. Cold enough. You hesitated. You felt something. And now you can't stop replaying it in your mind. The missed stab. The child's eyes. The tremor in your wrist. You try to shake it. You bury it. But it haunts you. Because the job wasn't just about killing, it was about being invisible. Being perfect. You weren't. So now you run. Through forests. Across rivers. Into towns where your face hasn't reached yet. You change your name. Again. You pretend to be a wandering flute player. You lie to a kind widow who offers you soup. You sleep under a different tree each night just in case. And every morning you wake up expecting steel. Not from enemies. From the person who used to trust you to do the job you did it. The job's done. The blade struck true. No screams, no guards, no witnesses. Just a quick exhale and a body that won't be waking up. Clean, efficient, maybe even graceful if you squint past the moral nausea. Now run, because success doesn't feel like victory. It feels like pressure in your chest and a burning in your legs as you sprint into the night. You don't wait to admire your work. You don't pause for applause. You flee. Because the moment the blade sank in, the world turned against you. Guards are coming. Not now, but soon. You know the rhythm. One servant finds a cracked door. One cook wonders where the master went. Then come the search parties. Then the dogs. Then the gates slam shut. If you're not gone by then, you're part of tomorrow's warning speech. Let this be a lesson to all would-be traitors. So you stick to the plan. The alley to the stables, the rope behind the smithy, the false door in the city wall, built generations ago by someone with far more imagination than loyalty. You practiced this, you rehearsed, but that doesn't stop your pulse from thudding like war drums in your ears. You move through the night like smoke, heart pounding, every footstep a gamble. You reach the outer road. For now, you're clear. But you're not done. Because next comes the real challenge, vanishing. Historians still debate whether medieval assassins had elaborate escape networks or just made it up as they went along. Truth is, it was both. You plan everything. The route, the backup route, the backup to the backup. And then, you throw it all out the window when some stable boy takes a wrong turn and blocks the alley. Your escape is never smooth. This time your boot rips. You step on a nail. You drop your only coin purse down a drain. Nothing ever goes perfectly, and anyone who says otherwise either got very lucky or died before they had to improvise. And then there's the client. Ah, yes. The noble or merchant or shadowy someone who gave you the job. Don't expect a warm welcome and a celebratory drink. If they were smart, they're already gone. If they were paranoid, they're watching you right now through a curtain wondering if you're going to ask for more than you were promised. Because here's the unspoken truth. A successful assassin is the most dangerous person alive. You've proven you can slip into guarded homes. You can take out powerful people. You can leave without a trace. That doesn't make your client feel safe. That makes them feel vulnerable. So even if they do pay you, they also send someone to watch you, to follow, to make sure you don't get ambitious or chatty. So you take your payment quickly. You avoid eye contact. You say nothing. You let them believe you're dumb, tired, loyal, whatever makes them feel better. And you disappear before they start imagining you sneaking into their room next. You don't even count the coins until you're 3 towns away. And what do you get for your effort? A handful of silver, a few bruises, a new scar you didn't notice until you tried to sleep on your side, and a week of paranoia so thick you flinch every time someone says the word cloak. You sleep in haylofts. You bribe ferry captains with silence and side eyes. You shave your beard with a broken mirror and pretend your name is something boring and forgettable. Brother Lucian, Tomas the fisherman, someone who smiles too easily and walks with a limp that might be real or just well-practiced paranoia. Because this job doesn't end at the kill. It resets. The second the blade strikes, the countdown begins to your next identity, your next town, your next lie, and you never go back. Not to the scene, not to the client, not to the version of yourself that used to sleep deeply and laugh loudly. That person's gone. You killed them a long time ago. Probably by accident. Now all that's left is the figure moving through fog, breathing shallow, boots silent, heart quiet, and a coin pouch in their hand that weighs less than the memory it came with. You'd think after a clean job and a clean escape, you'd feel something like satisfaction, maybe even pride. But no. What you feel is hunted, because even though the blood's dry, and your clothes have been changed, and your 2 days' ride from the nearest hint of civilization, your body doesn't believe you're safe. Not yet, maybe not ever. You walk quickly, but not too quickly. Hurrying makes people ask questions. You keep your head down, not because you're ashamed, but because faces are dangerous. Yours is now attached to a whisper somewhere. A noble found. Dead guards baffled. Nothing stolen. Just a shadow that slid in and left silence behind. You're that shadow. And the world hates shadows. Every town you pass through has its own flavor of suspicion. One innkeeper eyes your boots too closely. A merchant frowns when he sees your hands, calloused, scarred, and clearly not those of a carpenter despite what you claimed. Even the children seem to sense something. They stare. They whisper. They ask their mothers why the quiet man smells. Like old leather and wet moss. You don't linger. But no matter how many towns you pass, you're always followed by the same 2 things: paranoia and questions. See, most people think the danger ends when the target dies. But that's not true. That's just when the danger changes, because now, you're the one who knows too much. Who did too much? And someone out there, Maybe a rival noble, maybe a second client you never met, is wondering if you need to be eliminated next. Historians still argue whether medieval assassins operated within broader political games, or whether they were just tools, sharp ones, sure, but tools nonetheless. What's clear is that no one likes a tool that thinks it's a person, so you hide. Your tools, your weapons, are buried in the forest, marked with a stone you'll never admit you carved. Your dagger's gone. You carry a stick now, limping, slightly. You tell strangers you're a wandering tanner or a herbalist. You even start putting crushed rosemary under your nails so your hands smell the part. Still, they don't trust you, because something about you is off. Not just the silence or the way you always choose the seat closest to the wall. It's in your eyes. You've seen too much. You've walked too quietly. You don't belong among villagers who argue about sheep and gossip about rain, so you move on. Always. You change your name again. You invent a backstory so detailed you start to believe it. You rehearse it at night, whispering the details like a lullaby. My wife died last winter. I've been traveling since, looking for work. I once worked in a tannery in Droswick. You've never been to Droswick, but now Droswick is your safe word. And yet, sometimes you wonder, what if you didn't run? What if you just stayed? What if you told the merchant who keeps eyeing you that, yes, you did kill a man last week, but only because he was planning to burn down a village? What if you told the innkeeper that you're not just passing through, you're tired and cold, and you'd really like a quiet place to sleep where no one tries to stab you? But you don't, because you know how that story ends. It ends with a knock on your door at midnight. It ends with a blade in your back or a rope around your neck. It ends with the last sound you hear being someone whispering your name in the wrong tone. So instead, you smile. You nod. You thank them for the soup and you leave before sunrise. No one remembers you. That's the goal. Because safety isn't about hiding behind walls. It's about never being known in the first place. You're in a new town now. One with slightly straighter roads, slightly taller buildings, and a slightly better smell. Though that last part is probably because of the wind. Still, it's a change. Not safer. Just different. And with that, difference comes the question that always creeps into your mind after a job. What now? Because unlike the tales spun by drunken minstrels, being an assassin isn't a journey. There's no grand finale. No crowning moment where someone pins a medal to your cloak and declares you master of shadows. No retirement plan. No farewell. Banquet. There's just the next job, and before that, waiting. Waiting is the assassin's second profession. You don't spend most of your time killing. You spend it existing, quietly, patiently, bored out of your skull while pretending not to be. You sit in taverns. You scan for coded messages left in shutters or scratched into stable doors. You eavesdrop on conversations you're not supposed to hear and pretend to care about ones you are. You eat bad bread and worse soup and hope the next contract is something simple, something straightforward, something without dogs. But simple never comes. The next name always arrives the same way. Discreet, suspiciously timed, and never written in full. Just enough to make you curious. Never enough to make you comfortable. And always followed by that slow, creeping feeling of inevitability. You could ignore it. Walk away. Start a new life as a farmer or a wandering flute player. You've considered it. You even bought a flute once. You didn't know how to play it, but it looked honest. Clean. Like something a person with peace in their heart might own. You traded it for a knife 2 days later. Historians still wonder whether assassins ever truly left the profession, or whether the nature of the work made it impossible. Some argue that once you've crossed certain lines, there's no way back across. Others think it was just about survival. You keep killing because it's the only thing that keeps you from being killed. You don't have an answer. You just know you keep walking. You scout the new town, the people, the walls, the routines. The baker opens early. The guards rotate every 4 hours. The tavern owner has a limp and a soft spot for lost causes. You memorize faces. Study door, hinges. Count how many steps it takes to walk from the well to the town square. You're not planning anything. Not yet. But your brain doesn't know how to stop preparing. It's all muscle memory now. At night, you lie awake in a rented cot, staring at the rafters and trying to remember the last time you slept through until morning. And during the day, you wait for a tap on the shoulder, for a coin purse left on your table, for someone to say a name that doesn't belong to them, but does belong to your next job. Sometimes you think about saying no. You imagine handing the pouch back, shaking your head, and disappearing into the hills forever. You'd learn to fish, you'd grow onions. You'd forget how it feels to press a blade to someone's throat and listen to them not breathe. But even in those daydreams, you know better. Because the jobs don't stop coming, and you don't know how to stop taking them. So, you sit. You sip something warm. You watch people live lives you'll never have. You smile at the innkeeper and nod at the blacksmith. And you wait. Because somewhere, someone is already whispering your next name, and when it arrives, you won't run. You'll just reach for your boots, pick up your blade, and vanish like you always do. Because in this life, the only thing scarier than the next job is not having one at all. You hear it in passing, your next name. Not spoken directly to you, of course. That would be far too easy. It comes while you're sitting in a tavern, pretending to nurse a mug of something vaguely alcoholic and wholly unpleasant. Two men at the next table talk too loudly. They're discussing a noble, a baron maybe, someone with too many enemies and just enough arrogance to think no one could touch him. But someone wants to. And that's when your pulse slows. Not quickens, slows. Like the air has thickened around you. Like your bones know before your brain. Does this is the job. No coin purse has changed hands. No orders delivered by a scribe with a twitchy eye. Just a whisper, a rumor, a very convenient confirmation that this baron has a history of surviving accidents, which in your experience means someone has tried before and failed. Lucky you. You spend the next few hours doing what you always do, pretending you're not doing anything. You buy bread you won't eat. You wander near the estate under the guise of admiring the river. You count guards, spot towers, measure sight lines. You make mental notes of which windows flicker with candlelight and which doors are used by servants. After sunset, you're building a map inside your head, and then the waiting begins. Again, assassinations aren't rushed. Despite what stories say, you don't leap across rooftops at midnight, daggers flashing in the moonlight. You watch, you listen, you learn patterns, weaknesses, habits. You become a ghost with a notepad. You learn that the baron drinks too much on Wednesdays, that his favorite concubine is also his best source of gossip, that he occasionally sneaks out dressed as a commoner to feel the pulse of the people, which is possibly the stupidest and most useful habit a noble could have. You also learn that his estate has a dog the size of a small bear and an unnerving fascination with sniffing under tables. Great. Historians still puzzle over whether assassins truly operated with such patience and precision, or whether the more poetic descriptions are just that, poetry. But you know the truth. Hesitation kills, but preparation saves. Every night, you lie on your cot and trace the plan in your mind. Entry point, distraction, strike, exit. You do this over and over until you can walk the path with your eyes closed. And then one day, the opportunity opens like a wound. The baron's guard shifts. A new one, young, careless, too eager to impress. The baron's carriage is late. The town's priest has arrived, and the estate is distracted trying to hide last night's less than holy festivities. The back gate is left ajar. You don't smile. You don't stretch. You just move. Because now the planning ends and the silence begins. You slide past the gate, keeping low. Your hands don't shake. They've learned better. Your cloak doesn't flap, it clings wet with early dew. Your knife is tucked in the back of your belt, easy to draw, easier to lose. Inside, the air is thick with wine and incense. Nobles love their smells. Makes it harder for them to notice a scent that doesn't belong, like you. You make it to the hall. The baron is alone, hunched over a letter, the wax seal still warm. His head tilts as if he senses something. He opens his mouth. You close it for him. Fast, quiet, no mess. The way it's supposed to go. But this time, it's different. Because as you step back, you see something you hadn't counted on. Another figure in the shadows. A servant? A lover? A child? You freeze. They don't scream. They just look at you. Eyes wide, lips parted, and you see it in their expression. Recognition, not of you, of what you are, that's worse. You don't wait to find out if they'll talk. You vanish, same as always, but this time the silence feels heavier. Like it's following you. Like someone left a door open and now all the air is leaking out of the world. Back at your inn, you pack quickly. No breakfast. No warm goodbye to the girl who smiled at you yesterday. You leave like you always do. Quiet. Fast. With the kind of precision that only comes from years of practiced guilt. And somewhere behind you, a servant stares at a dead man and remembers a figure in the dark. With eyes that didn't blink, you won't be a ghost in their memory, you'll be a monster. The road stretches out before you like a sentence you're not sure you deserve. Muddy, uneven, and scattered with the regrets of your last job. Your boots are heavy, not just from the dirt, but from the weight of what that servant saw. That look, you've killed before. Nobles, guards, corrupt clerics, even a merchant once who paid you with one hand and begged for his life with the other. But this time, someone saw. Not just the act, but you. And not in the, you'll be reported to the authorities kind of way. Worse. They'll remember you. Not your name, not your clothes, but your presence. The way you moved. The way the shadows clung to you like they knew what you were doing. The way your eyes didn't flinch, and the world doesn't forget that. Now you're walking away from that estate like it's behind you. It's not. Not really. It's stitched to your shadow, whispering reminders every time the wind changes. Still, you do what you always do. Keep moving. You pass through villages with crooked signs and crooked people. A toothless old woman tells you not to sleep facing east. A boy offers to shine your boots with river mud. A drunk offers you a job you'd rather not describe. You play your part. You're not an assassin. You're a traveler, a tinker, a herbalist. A man looking for peace or at least somewhere to sleep where no one checks under your cloak. But it follows you. That look. Historians still wonder how assassins coped with guilt, or whether they did at all. Some believe they hardened into emotionless wraiths. Others think the guilt was what made them human, and it's true. There's a strange kind of humanity in remembering the faces of the people who didn't scream. You find a place to camp for the night. A hollow beneath an old tree, half hidden by thorns and wishful thinking. You eat what little you have, a crust of bread, some dried meat, water that tastes vaguely of moss. And you try not to think about the job, but you do. You always do. You think about the letter the Baron was reading, what it said, who sent it, whether it was important or just some ceremonial nonsense about taxes and titles. You think about the candle that was still burning when you left and whether anyone noticed the smoke curling under the door. You think about the servant, whether they talked, whether they cried, whether they told the guards the truth, or kept your secret for reasons even they couldn't explain. Sometimes people do that. Sometimes they see you, really see you, and choose silence. Not out of fear, but out of pity. Or maybe they think you're something else, an angel of vengeance, a punishment sent by the gods. You've heard that before. A priest once called you the wrath of justice in mortal form. You didn't know whether to be flattered or terrified. Now you lie back against the tree, eyes on the stars, trying to remember how many names you've had. You forget the first one. That's how you know you've been doing this too long. Tomorrow, there'll be another town, another tavern, another chance to vanish. But tonight, you're just a man in the dark, listening to the wind move through the leaves like it knows your secrets. And for a moment, just a flicker, you imagine a different life. One where your hands aren't stained with silence. One where you're remembered not as a shadow but as something that lived. But the wind shifts. The tree creaks. An owl screeches in the distance. And you remember who you are. Not a dreamer. Not a ghost. Just the space between both. Morning hits you like a tax collector, unwelcome, persistent, and always a little too early. The cold seeps into your bones before your eyes even open. Your makeshift camp beneath the old tree offers zero comfort, and the mossy ground has done wonders for your spine. You stretch slowly, quietly. Every sound you make, even a breath, feels like it might summon something you don't want to meet. You listen. No footsteps, no barking dogs, no guard patrols crashing through the underbrush. So far, so undead. But that doesn't mean you're safe. You move on. The next village is little more than a cluster of roofs slumped between two tired hills. Chickens roam like they own the place. Children stare. A blacksmith pounds out horseshoes with the same rhythm people use to forget. You enter the tavern, not because you're hungry, though you are, but because taverns are libraries, markets, and post offices for people like you. Everyone talks eventually, and when they do, you listen. The innkeeper's talkative. A good sign. He mentions the Baron, mentions the murder, lowers his voice like someone might overhear. No leads, he whispers. Professional, they say. Not a drop of blood, not even a scream. You stir your soup, lukewarm, cabbage adjacent, and nod along. You're not proud, but you're not smug either. Pride gets people caught. You just file away the fact that your name hasn't floated to the surface yet. That means you still have time. You eat fast. You pay. You smile. Then you walk. Your path winds through a forest that might as well have been painted by someone who missed storms. Wet leaves slap your face. Roots try to trip you. The air is damp, like the trees are sweating secrets. You think about the servant again, the one who saw you. Still no wanted posters. No guards with your description, which means one of two things. Either they didn't talk, or someone doesn't want people talking. Historians still debate whether medieval assassination victims were always publicly mourned. Some suggest that in certain cases, nobles kept things quiet to avoid appearing weak or to hide what the victim had been involved in. And if that's the case, you just became someone's private problem. Worse than a bounty is a noble who wants you dead without making it public. No mob, no manhunt. Just a quiet figure slipping through the night with your name on a list and a dagger that doesn't ask questions. You know the signs. The feeling of being watched, the too quiet street, the way a crow follows you for too long. You used to be that figure. Now someone else might be. So you adjust. You change course mid-walk. You cross streams to throw off scent. You double back, on your own trail, and wait in the bushes for an hour watching the road. Nothing. Not yet. Still, you don't go into town that night. You sleep in a barn, curled behind stacks of hay, listening to cows chew and wondering if you're finally losing it. Because paranoia isn't a luxury, it's a job requirement. Every rustling leaf, every whisper of wind could be someone like you. A ghost in leather. A memory in motion. A footnote with a grudge. You lie there staring up through gaps in the roof, stars blinking like they're keeping score. And you think, how many people have looked up like this, wondering if tonight was their last? How many of them were the ones holding the blade? You fall asleep with your dagger in your hand and your back to the wall just in case. Because in your line of work, just in case, is the only thing that's kept you alive this long. You wake up before the rooster, not because you're disciplined, but because something snapped in your dream and it dragged you back into the real world like a rope around your chest. It's still dark. The barn smells like old straw and older. Regrets. A rat scurries past your foot and pauses like it's weighing its odds. Smart rat. Moves on. You stretch slow and silent. You're stiff, but not wounded. Tired, but not dead. In your profession, that's the closest thing to a good morning. You don't waste time. You grab your things, double-check your blade, and vanish out. The back before the farmer wakes to feed the cows. You leave a coin behind. Not because you're generous, because farmers talk. A missing coin raises fewer questions than a missing guest. You slip back onto the road, avoiding the main path. You move like a roomer, soft-footed and barely there. Birds begin to stir and the world breathes fog. It's quiet. Too quiet. Which means it's time to assume you're being followed. You don't run. Running makes noise. You listen. For footsteps that match yours. For rustling branches that don't belong to the wind. For breathing. It's probably nothing. You know that. But probably is a luxury you can't afford. Historians still argue whether medieval assassins were paranoid by necessity, or whether the job just broke something inside them over time. But you've lived the answer, it's both. The job trains you to expect betrayal, and life fills in the rest with proof. You step off the road again, veering into a thicket. Your boots are damp within seconds, and brambles claw at your legs like they're owed something. You push through, circle back, and climb a ridge that gives you a good view of the road below. Nothing. Just mud and mist. Still, you wait. It's a test. Of your nerves. Of your training. You breathe slow. Count to 100. Watch for movement. Then finally, when the sun breaks over the hill like it's unsure whether it should, you move on. Still watching. Still uncertain. The paranoia fades but never fully leaves. You make it to the next village by noon. It's bustling in that slow medieval way. Carts creaking, pigs squealing, townsfolk arguing over bread prices like their lives depend on it. Maybe they do. You buy an apple. You nod at the baker. You avoid the tavern. Too many eyes. Instead, you head toward the church, not to pray, to listen. Churches are gold mines of gossip. People speak freely near holy walls. Confessions, rumors, plans whispered between trembling hands and the smell of wax. You lean against a side wall, eyes closed, face passive, like you're just another sinner waiting his turn. You hear about a theft in the next town, a fire too. Villages away, a baron's mysterious death. Yes, that baron, someone says it was illness. Someone else claims it was divine punishment for sleeping with a merchant's wife. No one says assassin, which means your work is still invisible, or someone's working very hard to keep it that way. That's worse, because when a noble dies, and no one investigates, it means the people in power already know who did it, and they're choosing silence. That silence isn't protection. It's a net, and you may already be inside it. You leave the village fast, taking nothing, leaving less. You don't stay to see if anyone notices. You already know they will. You walk until your legs ache, then keep walking. Over the next hill, through the next forest, toward the next place where no one knows your name. You don't know where you're going, but you know what you're running from, and that's enough. You didn't plan on returning to this town, not because you burned any bridges, but because you never expected to survive long enough to retrace your steps. It's been over a year, maybe 2. Time gets blurry when your job description is perpetual disappearance. But here you are, different name, different posture, same eyes, always the eyes. The town hasn't changed much. The market still smells like fish and smoke. The inn still leans ever so slightly to the left, like it's given up trying. You walk, slowly, hands visible, cloak tucked neatly, the perfect portrait of a traveling scribe or a merchant's assistant. You even hum a little. Not a song anyone would recognize, just a tuneless sound people expect from harmless men. Harmless. If only. You chose this place for a reason, not sentiment, strategy. The job that brought you here years ago went smooth. No witnesses, no noise, no rumors that followed you beyond the valley. That kind of success earns a spot in your mental map, a red dot labeled safe for now, but safe is relative. You enter the inn, the same one, the same crooked beam by the fireplace, the same innkeeper with a face like old parchment. He doesn't recognize you, of course he doesn't. Your hair is longer, your beard thicker, your accent duller. But still, you watch him watch you just in case. You ask for a room, pay in full. Use a name you've only ever spoken aloud twice, once to a dying guard, once to a bored goat. Then you settle in. Historians still debate how. Often assassins reused old locations. Some believe they had permanent bolt holes. Others think the smart ones never returned to the same well twice. But you're not most assassins. You plan. You observe. You remember which towns forget quickly. This one, it forgets like it owes you money. The inn creaks above you. A couple argues through the wall. Someone's playing a fiddle badly in the street. You sit on the edge of the bed, unwrap a piece of bread, and take small, deliberate bites. You're not here for a job this time. You're here to listen. Because something's been gnawing at you for weeks. That job with the Baron, it's too quiet. No poster, no bounty. No hired killer whispering your name into the night. That kind of silence isn't peace. It's planning. And now, you're trying to find the source. So you visit the market. Ask vague questions about noble families. You listen to farmers, priests, drunks. You offer to mend a roof for a widow just so you can stand higher and watch who visits the mayor's house. And eventually, you hear it. A name. Not yours, but his. The one who hired you for the Baron's job. The go-between. The scribe with the ink-stained fingers and a fondness for figs. He's here. Now, you don't believe in coincidence. You wait. Follow. Quietly. No confrontation, just curiosity. You watch him meet with a man dressed too finely for this town. You see coins exchange hands. You see the slight nod, the kind of nod that always precedes something sharp. They're not done with you. They didn't let the Baron's death go. They let you go, on purpose. Which means one of two things. They need you, again, or they want to watch how far you'll run before they pull the leash. Either way, you're not staying. You leave the inn before midnight. Don't even touch the bed, just slide back into the fog that brought you here. You don't run. Not yet. But you also don't look back. Because now you know something worse than being hunted, you're being studied. The road out of town isn't just familiar. It feels staged. The trees lean in just a little too close. The crows on the branches pause their usual cawing, as if waiting for something more interesting to happen. You keep your head down. Footsteps, measured, but your mind sprinting ahead, mapping possibilities. If they let you walk away, it wasn't mercy. It was a test. And now you're pretty sure you just failed it by coming back. Still, you walk. Fast, but not hurried. Straight-backed, but not proud. You've spent years mastering this pace. Not worth stopping, not worth noticing. Just another man on the road with somewhere to be and nothing to offer. But you know they're out there watching. The scribe, the nobleman, maybe even someone you haven't met yet. Someone who's read your name in the wrong ledger. Someone who's been waiting for you to slip. And the worst part? They might not want to kill you, they might want to hire you. That thought follows you for miles. Historians still wonder whether assassins ever got too valuable to eliminate. If their skills outweighed their sins. Some believe the best were kept, fed scraps of silver and sent after increasingly impossible targets until one finally stuck. You've heard stories like that. You've met people like that. One man, in particular. You don't say his name out loud, you haven't in years, but the memory hits you like a cold wind. He trained you, briefly. Back when you still ask questions like, is this the right thing? And how do I know when to stop? He answered both with the same shrug. You don't. That's the point. He taught you more than technique. He taught you survival. How to read a man's intent by his shoulders. How to count guards by candlelight flickers. How to kill without leaving marks. And when leaving marks meant something, you last saw him bleeding out behind a stable. You never learned who hired the blade that found his spine. But now, as you move deeper into the woods, you start to wonder, was he kept too long? Did he become too skilled, too expensive, too difficult to kill? Is that what's happening to you? Because the truth is, you've become predictable, not sloppy, just traceable. You always vanish the same way, leave the same kinds of clues. And someone's been following the thread. Someone's smart, which means it's time to break your pattern. You stop at a fork in the road. The left leads to a village. Safe, known, predictable. The right? Wilderness. No towns for miles. Bandits, wolves, rivers with no bridges. You take the right, because if someone's waiting for you down the safe path, then the dangerous one might actually be safer. You travel light. Your cloak is damp. Your boots blister. You run out of bread by nightfall and gnaw jerky that might actually be leather. You sleep under a tree shaped like a question mark. You don't dream. You scan the stars, and in the morning, your decision pays off. No one's followed. No footprints. No watchers. No messenger with the too polite smile of someone about to offer you a contract you can't refuse. You buy yourself time. Time to think, because now you need answers. Not from coin payers or message runners, from the source. Who gave the Baron's name? Who let you live? And more importantly, why? Because you're not a hero, but you are a variable. And in a world built on control, variables don't stay unchallenged for long. You cross the river barefoot. Not because there's no bridge, there is about half a mile upstream, but because bridges are traps. Predictable, watched, too easy to narrow down your path. So you wade through knee-deep, ice-cold water that bites, like a debt collector. Your teeth chatter, your fingers go numb, but when you reach the other side, drenched and dripping, you know two things. You're colder, but you're also harder to follow. You don't light a fire that night. Too risky. Smoke curls like a gossip, and warmth makes you slow. Instead, you curl beneath a rock outcrop, cloak still damp, listening to the wind and the creaking of the trees. The forest speaks. You just have to remember how to listen. By morning, your fingers work again. Barely. You keep walking, and somewhere along the path, as the trees begin to thin and the air tastes faintly of distant hearths, you decide it's time. Time to stop waiting for answers and start dragging them into the light. So you make a list in your head, not of targets, of contacts, people who owe you, people you spared, people who've whispered secrets in your direction, hoping not to be noticed. And one of those people lives not far from here, a fence. Not for stolen goods, for information. The kind of man who trades rumors like grain, storing them until they ripen into profit. You reach his cottage at dusk. It's smaller than you remember. Or maybe you're just taller now, more bent by time. Either way, it's still the same. Moss. On the roof, a goat tied out front, and a chimney that always smokes a little too sweet. You knock once, softly, then twice, sharply. The code hasn't changed. The door creaks open. He peers out, same beady eyes, same patchy beard, same cautious. Welcome masked as gruff annoyance. Well, he says, you're not dead. You shrug. Give it time. He lets you in. The place smells like onions and secrets. Papers are stacked everywhere. Bundles of dried herbs hang from the ceiling. A cat watches you like it's auditioning to replace you. Sit. You don't touch the tea he offers. Not because you think it's poisoned, because you don't think he would waste poison on tea. You heard something, you say. I hear everything, he replies. But yes, about the Baron. You raise an eyebrow. The job? He chuckles. No, that's old news. Everyone knew he was going to end up dead eventually. His only talent was accumulating enemies. Then what? The part after. He leans in, lowering his voice like someone might be eavesdropping from inside his floorboards. Whoever ordered the kill, they were testing. Not the Baron. You. Don't speak, because you already know it's true. He goes on. Word is they're building something. A network. Quiet. Deep. They're collecting people like you. Not guild, not brotherhood. Just a list. A list of killers? He shrugs. Killers, spies, people who don't blink when asked to do the impossible. Why? He smiles. Because something's coming. Something big. And when it does, they don't want soldiers. They want ghosts. Historians still debate whether secret networks of assassins existed on this kind of scale. Most dismiss it as fantasy, romantic nonsense cooked up by bored scribes. But you've seen enough to know better. When enough powerful people get scared, they build shadows before they build walls. You lean back, processing. And this network? He nods. They already know your name. How? His grin widens. Because you're still alive. You leave before the stars are fully out. No payment, no thanks, just a look. A quiet agreement between men who understand the price of knowing too much. Back on the road, the weight settles in your gut. You're on a list, not the kind you can hide from, the kind that gets you summoned or erased. And the worst part? You're not sure which they're planning. You don't sleep that night. You try. You find a hollow beneath a twisted tree, wrap yourself in your cloak, close your eyes, slow your breath. But your mind won't still, because you're not running from a name anymore. You're running from a network, and worse, you might already be part of it. The idea gnaws at you like a splinter in your spine. They knew the Baron would die. They knew you would do it. They didn't want revenge, they wanted a resume. And you passed the interview. Now what? You move before sunrise. Not because you're being followed, but because stillness makes the thoughts louder. The forest thins. The road curves toward the coast and you catch your first glimpse of the sea in weeks. Salt on the breeze. Distant gulls. The horizon pulled tight like a thread someone forgot to cut. You head toward a port town. Not big, not important. The kind of place where smugglers keep their boats, and everyone minds their own business, because no one can afford not to. You arrive mid-morning, hood up, gait casual, coin pouch tucked beneath 3 layers of fabric. You walk like someone who's been here before. You haven't. That's the trick. You find the tavern closest to the docks and take a seat in the corner. Always the corner. From here you can see the door, the windows, the stairs, and the man you're waiting for. You don't know his real name. Never needed to. But you remember what he does. Gets people out. Off the map. Away from cities and into places where no one asks where you've been or what you've done. He sits beside you without speaking. You nod once. Slide a small token across the table. Nothing fancy. A flat stone with a carved line through the center. Years ago, he gave it to you. Said if you ever needed to disappear for good, give it back. Now you are. He picks it up, feels its weight. Pockets it, still no words. He doesn't need to ask why. He's heard the rumors too. Ship leaves at dusk, he says finally. No names, no questions. Where to? Does it matter? You shake your head. Not anymore. Historians still argue whether assassins truly vanished when they wanted to. Some say it's impossible, that people with your skills, your trail of bodies never retire. Others believe the smart ones do, that they trade blood for anonymity and walk into the fog forever. You've wondered too. Can someone like you actually disappear? You leave the tavern and wander the docks pretending to admire the boats. You count guards, exits, patrol patterns. You calculate how quickly you could vanish if someone said your name. Old habits. You watch a boy feed scraps to gulls. A sailor repair a torn sail with more care than most people give their children. A woman laugh too loudly at a joke she didn't hear. These are real people. You are not one of them. Not anymore. You sit on a crate and think. If you leave, you could have a new name, a new job. A place where no one knows what a garrote is or how fast it can silence a scream. You could teach something. Farm. Fish. Lie about your limp and say it came from a horse, not a rooftop. You could fade. But deep down, something twists. Not fear, not guilt. Curiosity. Because whoever's building that list, the one you're now apparently on, they're not just playing games. They're preparing for something. And you've always wanted to know what comes next. So when dusk falls and the ship creaks at the dock, you don't board. You thank the man, return the token, then turn around and walk straight back into the storm. Because maybe it's foolish, maybe it's suicidal, but whatever's happening in the shadows of this world, you're not done being part of it. Not yet. The next city is bigger, not capital-level sprawling, but big enough to swallow someone whole and never cough up the bones. It smells like fish, fire, and ambition. The kind of place where nobles hold banquets in marble halls while pickpockets barter in alleyways for scraps and second chances. You arrive at night. That's the rule. Always arrive at night. The shadows are friendlier. The questions fewer. Your cloak's pulled tight, your face half hidden. You don't stride in like a hero. You leak into the place. A trickle of existence, easy to overlook, and you start where you always start. Observation. No talking, no asking, just watching. You perch at the edge of the plaza. You count guards. You track the city bell's rhythm. You note who walks with purpose, who walks with fear, and who watches others a little too closely. Because if this city's part of the network, if the shadow organization really exists, then this is where the threads pull tight. And eventually, the pattern reveals itself. A merchant's son with too much coin and too few questions suddenly starts traveling under guard. A priest with no political connections suddenly vanishes. No funeral, no fuss, and a name keeps appearing. Quietly, softly. Never spoken loud. The architect. Historians would roll their eyes. The idea of a singular mind behind a shadow empire? Too romantic. Too clean. But people don't invent names like that without reason. Someone's pulling strings. Someone's building something, and they're using assassins to do it. You spend the next week in the city, not as yourself. That man wouldn't last a day. You become a dock worker for 2 days, then a stable hand, then a courier with a lazy eye, and a limp that's only real half the time. You blend, and as you do, you learn. The city is buzzing under the surface. Murmurs of new alliances, silent purges, nobles who suddenly withdraw from public life citing illness, coin-changing hands under tables in candle-lit rooms that never open to the street, and always, always, those who vanish. Sometimes for good, sometimes just long enough to come back different. They move quieter, speak less, avoid mirrors. You know that look. It's the look of someone who's been recruited or broken. You try to find them, follow one or two. Corner a man who once sold fish and now moves like a soldier. He doesn't talk, not because he's loyal, because he's scared. Don't ask, he says. Just don't. You leave before he finishes his wine. You start sleeping during the day, moving at night, following the trail of names, whispers, signs etched into the corners of door frames. Marks only someone like you would notice. It leads you to the edge of the city, an old bathhouse closed for repairs, supposedly. No repairs ever happen, but people go in. Never the same ones twice, and they don't leave with towels. You circle it for 2 days. You watch the comings and goings. You see a face you recognize, barely. A noble's advisor. Thought dead. Definitely not dead. And now you're sure. This is where it starts, or ends. Historians still question how real recruitment centers for assassins were. Most believe guilds or temples were the more likely route, but you know better. Real organizations hide in plain sight, behind institutions too boring to investigate. Bathhouses, libraries, bakeries that never bake. You watch the door and decide it's time. You're going in, not to apply, to find out if the architect exists. And if they do, you're going to look them in the eye and see whether they flinch. You don't walk in through the front door. That's what they expect. Instead, you scale the rear wall under the cover of darkness, your hands finding familiar purchase on damp stone, your boots brushing moss so softly it doesn't even notice. You slip in through a broken window near the roof, a crack that no one bothers to fix because no one ever bothers to look up. The bathhouse is quiet. Too quiet. Not the silence of abandonment, but of intent. The kind of stillness that feels placed, like someone scrubbed away the noise. You land softly on old tiles, dust blooming beneath your feet. The air smells like wet stone and something older, like paper that's been burned and rewritten too many times. You move through the corridors. No torches. Just faint moonlight and your own heartbeat. Rooms pass by. Abandoned changing stalls, empty pools, a chamber with benches that once held laughter and gossip. But now, it all feels wrong. Like the place forgot what it was supposed to be. And then, you find it. A door, ordinary, unmarked, set into the stone like it's been there forever. Locked, of course. But locks are a suggestion. You pick it in 10 seconds flat. The room beyond is small and full. Maps, ledgers, names, documents pinned to walls, layered with string, marked with tiny black sigils shaped like crossed daggers, and faces. Some, some you've killed, some you thought were dead. You step in, careful not to disturb the dust, but someone's been here recently. A candle still smolders in the corner. A teacup sweats on the desk, and at the center of the far wall, pinned higher than the rest. Your face, rough sketch, close enough to sting. Beneath it, one word, variable, UI. Stare at it. Not asset, not threat, not even target. Variable. Something unpredictable. Something dangerous. You step back, slowly. Your hand twitches toward your blade. Not because you need it, because it's the only thing you trust right now. Historians still argue whether conspiracies like these truly existed, whether networks of influence ever built entire webs of loyalty and silence beneath the surface of known power. But in this moment, you know without a doubt they do, and you're in the center of one, by design. Behind you, a sound, not loud, not clumsy, just there. You turn, blade drawn, but the figure that steps into the doorway doesn't flinch. She's older, cloaked, eyes sharp as glass under pressure, no weapon in hand, no fear in her stance, just certainty. You're earlier than expected, she says. Her voice isn't unkind, it's practiced, smooth, like someone who's convinced every word she speaks is the correct one. You don't lower your knife. She gestures toward the wall of documents. You were meant to find this eventually. Sooner than this, honestly. We've been watching you. No kidding, you mutter. She almost smiles. You're not here by accident. You're here because we need people like you. Not obedient, not clean, just willing. You don't answer. Not yet. She nods, accepting the silence. Do what you want. Burn the records. Run. Kill me. But the truth stays. Something's coming. And when it arrives, it won't care how sharp your dagger is. Only how steady your hand is when the world begins to slip. You step toward her, she doesn't move. Who are you, you ask? Her eyes don't blink. I'm a builder, and you're the cornerstone. You hate the drama of it. But somehow, it feels true. You back away, leave the room as it was. No stolen files. No trail disturbed, just your mind spinning. You don't run, not yet. But you also don't stay. Not in this city, not tonight. Because now the question isn't if you're part of something bigger. It's how long you've been in it without knowing. You don't remember leaving the bathhouse. You remember the cold, the way it pressed against your skin like a warning, the way the woman's words clung to your thoughts like oil on water. You're the cornerstone. It sounded like prophecy. It felt like a trap. By the time you reach the outskirts of the city, dawn is cracking the sky open. The streets behind you are still asleep. You move through alleys and orchard paths, avoiding the main roads like they're cursed. You've been hunted before, but never recruited. And that makes this worse. Because at least with a bounty, you know who the enemy is. This feels like someone replaced your reflection with a blueprint. And you're just now realizing you've been walking through a house you didn't build. You follow the coast north, sleep in ruins, drink from streams, eat nothing for a day and a half before trading a small dull blade for a loaf of bread and a bitter apple. You think about what you saw, the wall of names, the map, the daggers, and that one word, variable. It keeps repeating in your head like a bell out of rhythm because you've spent your life being invisible, not unpredictable. You were careful. You followed your own rules. You didn't make noise, but they noticed anyway, which means you weren't hiding. You were being watched. Historians still wonder how far medieval espionage went, whether assassins ever operated as parts of sprawling spy networks or simply worked alone in the margins. The truth is likely somewhere in between. Lone blades, loosely held by an unseen hand. And now, you feel that hand hovering behind your shoulder. You reach a cliffside village. 2 days later, wind-worn and sea-stained, Nothing here but fisherman's salt and secrets that no one's rich enough to care about. Perfect. You rent a room from an old widow with a face like wrinkled parchment and a temper that could bend steel. She doesn't ask for your name, just payment. You hand her 3 silver coins and a silent promise not to stay long. She points upstairs. Mind the 3rd step. It squeaks like a drunk bishop. You nod. That night you lie awake in the creaking dark, and you wonder what kind of man lets himself be turned into a cornerstone. Because that's what they want, isn't it? Not just your blade, but your belief, your buy-in, your yes. You've never said yes to anyone. You were raised by silence, trained by necessity. Loyalty was something people demanded from you after they paid you to betray someone else, and now? Now they want your name carved into the foundation of something bigger, but you don't even know what it is yet. Revolution, control, chaos. You close your eyes, and you see her face, the woman in the bathhouse, calm, composed, utterly convinced of her own purpose. And that's what rattles you most. She believes in what you don't know. But belief? That's rare, dangerous, infectious. You wake before dawn, cloak dry, blade sharp, questions louder than ever. You have to find out more. Not because you want to join, because you need to understand what they're building, and more importantly, who they plan to destroy to build it. You watch the sea for a long time before moving again, because once you step off this cliffside, you're not just avoiding shadows, you're walking into them. You travel inland, away from the sea, away from safety. Because answers don't float on tides, they sit in cities. Deep, old cities, where secrets cling to stone walls and power hums beneath the floorboards like a heartbeat you're not supposed to hear. You follow old roads, sometimes paved, sometimes nothing more than deer trails worn thin by centuries of forgotten footsteps. Every town you pass through feels smaller than the last, even when it isn't. Maybe it's you shrinking, folding into yourself. Or maybe it's the weight of what you're chasing. You're not running anymore, you're hunting. But this time your prey isn't a person, it's a truth. The architect. The network. The reason you were marked variable. The blueprint you walked into blind. Somewhere in this empire of whispers, someone knows the whole story, and you plan to find them. Historians still puzzle over whether political assassinations in the medieval period were ever truly freelanced. Some argue that the most successful killers had invisible sponsors, that the dagger in the dark was often backed by a crown, a bishopric, or a family crest pressed into wax and wrapped in secrecy. You're beginning to believe it, because there's too much order in the chaos around you. Too many vanishings. Too many sudden deaths that come with no questions. Too many rivals who go quiet mid-scheme and are never heard from again. This isn't just opportunity, it's orchestration. You reach a city that doesn't advertise its name. One of those ancient places built before borders were drawn. It smells of iron and incense. The walls are tall, not to defend from armies, but from ideas. The guards are polite, too polite. The markets feel staged, and the scribes here, they know everything. You find one of them easily. You've met his kind before. He speaks 5 languages, keeps secrets in ink, and has fingers stained with truth he'll never say aloud. He recognizes you instantly, but doesn't flinch, which tells you everything. You slide him a question, disguised as a riddle. He answers, with a whisper, disguised as a cough. The architect doesn't meet with variables. You raise an eyebrow. But you've met with others. He nods. Only the ones who've already chosen. Chosen what? He leans forward. To stop asking questions. You leave him a coin, a warning glance, and a promise that you're not finished. Because the more you dig, the more the pieces align. This network isn't a fantasy. It's real, old, deep, and growing. You walk the city for hours after that, watching faces, counting signs, reading between conversations, and you realize something chilling. This place, it's not just a city. It's a recruitment center, not for soldiers, for believers. You pass a group of boys training with wooden knives. Too young to fight, too precise to be playing. You see a merchant hand over a scroll in secret to a man in robes with a sigil stitched into his sleeve. The same crossed daggers you saw pinned above your face. This isn't a conspiracy anymore. It's a program. And you? You're not just being watched. You're being tested. That night you sit atop the city wall, legs dangling over the edge, wind cold against your face, blade across your lap like a trusted friend with no good advice left to give. And you ask yourself the question you've avoided since the Baron fell. Do you want to be part of this? Do you want to belong to something built on purpose, or do you keep running alone until the only name left is the one etched on your grave? You close your eyes, not to rest, to remember the people you've killed, the ones you spared, the nights you almost didn't make it, the way silence always felt like safety until now, and you whisper to the wind, what are you building? Because if they won't answer, you'll tear the answers out yourself. The message comes at dawn, not in a scroll, not delivered by Raven, not even slipped under a door with theatrical flair. It's carved into the wooden beam of your rented room, 3 lines, small, perfectly etched, a triangle, a pair of daggers, and a single word, tonight. You don't react. Not outwardly. Inside. Every muscle tightens. Every breath shortens. You've seen messages like this before. Not from this group, but from others. Nobles, spy masters, guilds that pretended not to be guilds. But this feels final. It's not a summons, not a threat. It's a door. They're opening it, and it's up to you whether you walk through. You go about your day like a man with errands. You sharpen your blade, polish your boots, trade 3 copper coins for a new set of gloves, leather, pliable, stitched for silence. You walk the market, counting eyes. No one's watching. Everyone's watching. You spot a child drawing the dagger sigil in the dirt, probably meaningless, but it still knots your stomach. You eat, slowly, not for hunger, fuel. You'll need clarity tonight. Then, before the sun dips, behind the hills you return to the bathhouse, a different one this time, bigger, deeper, older. The front attendant gives no resistance, just nods once and points down a long, narrow hall lit with candles that never flicker. The floors are polished stone, the silence unnaturally complete. You follow the path. At the end, a room, circular, dome above, torches in iron sconces, no furniture, no guards, just space. And in that space, her, the woman from before, but this time she's not alone. 3 others, one tall, one slight, one silent as breath. You stand in the doorway. They don't ask who you are. They already know. She steps forward. You came. Not a question. You nod. I have questions, you say. Good, she replies. That means you're not broken yet. You watch her. The way she doesn't blink. The way she never turns her back to you. So ask. You breathe in and ask the only question that matters. What do you want from me? She smiles. The same thing we want from everyone. And then she says it. The thing. The spine behind the shadow. We're preparing for collapse. Historians often theorize that the fall of great empires isn't sudden, but that those closest to the rot always know. They see the cracks first. They start hoarding, positioning, whispering. That's what this is. They're not starting a war. They're preparing to survive one. She explains, quietly, firmly, like it's all already happened, and you're just catching up. Kings are too fat. Councils too divided. The church fractured. Trade routes brittle. When it breaks, and it will, there must be people in place. People who can move without title, kill without name, disappear without consequence. You've already done it, she says. We're just giving it meaning. You don't speak, because a part of you, maybe the worst part, understands. They're not offering money. They're offering purpose, control, influence, legacy. Not in your name, but in your shadow. You can say no, she adds, and walk away. But you'll still watch me, you reply. Of course, she says. We always watch what we can't control. She steps closer, offers you a ring. Black iron, smooth, etched with the triangle. It won't make you powerful. It will make you theirs. You take it. Not because you've chosen, because this game has more pieces, and you're not done flipping the board. You don't put the ring on, not yet. You slip it into your cloak pocket, nestled beside a folded piece of dried bread and a flint that doesn't always spark. The ring feels heavier than it should, like it knows what it means, and it's daring you to forget. The others in the chamber don't react. They expected hesitation. They've seen it before, maybe even prefer it. Blind loyalty is fragile. Doubt, though? Doubt sharpens the blade. The woman, your recruiter, handler, warden, whatever she truly is, gives you one last nod. Then she turns. This way, she says. No further explanation. You follow. Down a spiral staircase carved directly into the stone. No torches, no sound. Just the rhythmic scrape of your boots and the soft hiss of air that somehow gets colder with every step. You wonder how far beneath the city you've gone. Eventually the stairs end. Another chamber, larger, warmer, alive. This one hums, not with noise, but with presence. People, dozens, maybe more, not speaking, not moving much. Just existing, watching, a room full of ghosts that haven't died yet. And every single one of them wears the ring. You've seen their faces before. Not these specific people, but these types. The former guardsman with a limp. The ex-priest with two steady hands. The noblewoman pretending to be nothing. The pickpocket who always seems to vanish just before trouble starts. These are not killers, these are operatives. Some of them might not have ever touched a blade, but every single one has done something they'd never admit out loud. And all of them? They've said yes. They see you. Some with curiosity, some with caution. One or two with faint recognition. You nod, just once. They nod back. You've just been added to a ledger that doesn't get sealed. The woman gestures toward a table, near the back. Documents spread across it, maps with red threads, tokens, names. The game board, she says. We keep track of the world while it forgets to watch itself. You look closer. One city is circled in black ink. 3 times. The capital. You raise an eyebrow. Soon, she says. Too many threads converge. It can't hold. We need pieces in place. Pieces, you don't like that word, but it fits. You scan the table and see something else. A list of names, not targets. Recruitments. And one is circled in silver ink. You know that name. You trained with him. Once, thought he was dead, apparently not. Where is he now? You ask. The woman doesn't answer. She just slides a coin across the table. Silver. Scarred. Stamped with a symbol you don't recognize. A hand, with one finger raised as if asking for silence. You'll find out. Historians debate how much influence shadow groups had in the shaping of dynasties. Were kings truly toppled by war or by whispers behind velvet curtains? Were revolutions lit by ideals or by quiet, guided nudges from people you never saw? Tonight, you start to believe the latter. You're not just walking among conspirators. You're walking inside the mechanism, but you haven't given yourself to it. Not yet. You leave the chamber just before dawn. Same cloak, same blade, same blood. But something's different now, something subtle. The world feels wider and more dangerous. Because now you're not just hunted by the old enemies. You're watched by the new allies. And you haven't decided, which is worse. Back on the street, a boy bumps into you, slips something into your hand. He doesn't look back. It's a note. One line. Test begins at dusk. You'll know the target. You crush the paper in your palm, because deep down, you will know, and that's the real test. Dusk comes slowly, not like other nights. Not the kind that sweeps in with color and wind and the quiet promise of sleep. No, this dusk creeps. It drags its fingers across the buildings, smears the streets with shadow, hangs in the air like a question no one wants to answer, and you're the one who's supposed to reply. You sit in the upper corner of a crooked tavern, sipping something bitter and pretending not to care. Your cloak's draped over your shoulders, your dagger's hidden beneath your left sleeve, and in your pocket the ring, still unworn. You told yourself you'd wait until the test was over, but it feels like the test started the moment you walked. Out of that bathhouse, you scan the room. Too quiet for a tavern at this hour. Too many people not making eye contact. Too many faces you don't recognize. And one you do, your former ally. He walks in like someone chasing ghosts, moves like he forgot how to be ordinary. His clothes are civilian, but they sit wrong on his shoulders. His eyes sweep the room once, just once, and you know he's seen you. He doesn't react, neither do you. You finish your drink, leave a coin, walk out. He follows. Not closely, not obviously. Just enough to say, this is part of it. The city outside is colder than before. The alleys seem longer. The torches flicker like they're warning you to turn back, but you don't. You lead him through narrow passages, past closed shutters and silent chimneys. You choose a spot, an abandoned courtyard beneath the husk of a crumbling bell tower. You... Stop, wait. He steps into the open and speaks first. I wondered if it'd be you. His voice hasn't changed. Just aged. Dried out by time and consequence. You look worse, you say. Feel worse. A beat of silence. Then, you got the ring? You nod. But not the instructions. Just the name. He sighs. Low. Heavy. You're the test. But so am I. You don't flinch. Because you already suspected. No one survives this long without learning to read the edges of a lie. They said if I kill you, he continues, I get reinstated. You arch a brow. If you kill me, you reply, they probably give you a medal. Another silence. Then something you didn't expect. He laughs, only once. Funny thing is, I didn't take the job. You tilt your head. They offered? He nods 3 times. And? I said no. Why? He shrugs. They already took too much from me. I don't owe them another ghost. Historians still puzzle over loyalty among mercenaries and assassins. How some bonds forged in violence outlast kings and contracts. How shared survival sometimes builds a code stronger than any vow. Tonight, that theory holds. You lower your hand from your blade, he does the same. You should run, he says. They don't like refusals. Neither do I, you answer. You hand him the ring. He stares at it, turns it over in his fingers. You're not keeping it? Not yet, you say. Not until I know what I'm agreeing to. He nods. You don't shake hands, don't hug, don't reminisce about blood and brotherhood. You just walk in opposite directions. You return to your room, bolt the door, sit in the dark, and wait. Because tomorrow someone will ask what happened. They'll ask why the test wasn't completed. They'll ask who failed, and you'll have to decide. Was it them, or was it you? The ring sits on the table, unworn, but still watching. Morning arrives, but no one knocks. Not a courier. Not a watcher. Not a blade in the dark sent to clean up a failed test. Just silence, which, in your line of work, is rarely a blessing. It's more like the moment before a trap is sprung, too calm, too careful, as if the world is holding its breath, waiting to see what you'll do next. So you do what you always do. You move, not fast, not panicked, just ahead. You leave the room as if you were never there. Straw mattress undisturbed, ring left on the table in plain view. A message in itself. I saw the offer. I left it. You head east, through markets still stretching awake, past temple bells that ring like half-remembered warnings, until you find the alley with the red thread hanging from the drain pipe. A marker. Only someone who's been inside the network would know to follow it. You do. It leads to a nondescript shop with a slanted sign. Repairs. No mention of what kind, just a word. You push the door open. Inside, gears, scrolls, broken trinkets, old locks, waiting to be puzzled back to life. A man behind the counter nods once. Doesn't ask your name. He points to a curtain in the back. You go through. Another room, circular. No faces this time. Just a voice speaking from the shadowed recess of a high alcove. Why didn't you take the ring? You pause. Because the honest answer is complicated. I don't take tools I don't trust. You reply. Even if they're yours? They're not. Not until I choose them. The voice considers this. You're not a variable. It says you stiffen. You're a control. The term twists something in your gut. You set the pace, it continues. You tilt the board. You didn't fail the test. You were the test. Historians still speculate whether some operatives were used not for missions, but to gauge others. Walking, lie detectors, agents whose reactions measured the integrity of those around them, ghosts used as mirrors. Apparently you've become one. You let him live, the voice says. You don't answer, because you know they already knew. That was your choice. It continues, and choices in this network are more valuable than kills. Another pause. Then, you passed. You blink and laugh once. Dry. Humorless. No one said there was a pass. There never is, the voice replies. Only progression. A figure steps from the shadows. Not the woman this time. A man. Young. Older. Neither. Just someone who carries authority like a whisper no one can unhear. He holds out the ring. The same one. But now, it feels different. Not a chain. A key. You don't have to wear it, he says, but you should understand what it means. And what does it mean? He leans in. That you don't serve us. You serve the pattern. You take the ring, not to wear, to study. Because this time, you're watching them. And if they think you're going to be another stone in the foundation, another tool with a silent oath and a quiet grave, they haven't been paying close enough attention. You leave the shop with the ring tucked into your belt, not worn, not displayed, just present, like a word you haven't decided to speak. Outside, the city breathes like it always does, loudly, impatiently, unaware that somewhere beneath its cobbled bones, a decision just reshaped a network no one talks about. You melt back into the crowd, a shadow resuming its place beside the living, but the ring changes things, not visibly, not immediately, just enough that you start noticing doors you couldn't see before. A wink from a noble's guard at the palace gate. A tavern innkeeper who nods slightly and offers a room key without a word. Beggar who presses a scrap of parchment into your hand before vanishing behind a fruit cart. The message is brief. Winter conclave. 3 nights. Bring nothing but the ring. You burn the note before finishing your apple. Historians still puzzle over how certain medieval networks managed to coordinate across regions, borders, even empires. How assassins and informants knew where to gather, when to move, what signs to follow, without formal language or tracked logistics. But when you live in shadow, everything becomes signal, and you've just been invited to the next level. 3 nights later, you arrive at the edge of a frozen lake. The wind is brutal. The trees claw at the sky, but in the clearing near the shore there's a tent. Plain. Circular. Canvas so black it swallows the moonlight. You step inside. There are 7 of you, all strangers, all wearing the ring. No one speaks. There's a map in the center, etched into a disc of hammered steel. Cities marked, routes drawn, symbols unfamiliar even to you, and a man with a face like carved ash steps forward. He holds no weapon, but everyone listens when he speaks. We are not rulers, he says. We are not rebels. We are architects of continuity. When others fall, we remain. When systems rot, we rebuild from the dark outward. You don't flinch, because part of you suspected this already. He continues. Each of you has passed unnoticed, survived unaided. That makes you dangerous, but it also makes you useful. He gestures toward the map. Something is coming. The cracks are no longer just stress. They are fractures. And when the weight comes down, it will not be the crown that survives. It will be the quiet. The ones who know where to move, when to cut, when to disappear. You study the lines. One stretches toward a coastal capital you remember well. Another curves back toward the city with the bell tower where your test began. They aren't battle plans. They're blueprints. A new order, sketched in silence. You finally speak. What do you want me to do? The man looks at you, and for the first time in a long time, someone answers your question without pretending it's a riddle. Nothing yet. Just two words, but they chill you more than the wind ever could. You leave the tent before dawn. The others disperse like mist, fading into different paths, different names, different futures. You don't feel like an assassin anymore. You feel like a thread, pulled taut between what you were and what you're about to become. And the worst part? You're not sure which version of you was more dangerous. You return to the city, but this time it feels smaller. Not because the buildings have shrunk or the streets have changed, but because you have outgrown the illusion. What once felt like a web of complexity now seems like a stage. And you're no longer the actor. You're the one adjusting the curtains. You don't go back to the same room. You don't return to the old contacts. Those ties were temporary. That name forgettable. You pick a new one, a quieter one, because names are like tools, useful when needed, discarded when dulled. You find work in a records hall, deep beneath the city archives, surrounded by dust, scrolls, and ink that refuses to dry properly. No one asks questions in the records hall. No one notices you. Perfect. From here, you can watch. You learn who's being paid off and who's about to disappear, who travels with fake seals, and who carries real power hidden in plain robes. You intercept a letter meant for a distant bishop, and you read it twice before it vanishes into the furnace. You don't need orders. You already know what to do. Historians still question whether medieval intelligence networks had formal counterintelligence. Units, agents who didn't just assassinate but embedded, monitored, and managed entire populations silently from within. But if they did, they looked like you now. Because you've stopped waiting for the signal. You are the signal. One evening, you walk the upper walls of the city. Not to patrol, not to escape, just to see. The sun sets without drama. The wind moves without meaning. But in your pocket, the ring pulses with weight. Not magical, not cursed, just chosen. You take it out, turn it in your fingers. It's still the same ring. Iron, etched, silent. But it no longer feels like a test. It feels like a tool. And finally, after weeks, months, maybe a lifetime, you slip it onto your finger. It fits. No shock, no revelation, just quiet, like something clicking into place. You return to your tiny room beneath the archives. There's a knock. You open it to find a girl, maybe 10 years old, barefoot, carrying a candle stub wrapped in parchment. She says nothing, just hands. You the candle and leaves. You unwind the parchment, just a word, begin. That night you sleep with your boots on, because you know what that word means. It means plans are moving. Not yours, theirs. It means someone somewhere just lit the first fuse. And it means that whatever's coming, you're no longer a bystander. You're part of the ignition. You stare at the ceiling, the cracks, the shadows, the familiar breath of dust and cold, and you don't feel regret. You don't feel fear. You feel ready. Because whether this network burns the world down or builds something new from its ashes, you'll be there with a blade in your hand and a purpose in your shadow. The streets are quiet now. Not empty, just calm. The kind of calm that comes before something shifts. Pigeons flap half-heartedly across rooftops. Bells toll from distant towers like they're remembering a tune they once knew well. And you? You're walking slower than usual. Not because you're cautious, because you're thinking. Because for the first time in what feels like forever, you're not reacting. You're moving forward, and the path, while still shadowed, is yours. The network hums beneath your feet. You feel it in the glances of passing nobles, in the nervous quiet of overconfident guards, in the rustle of paper from a clerk who files the wrong name at the right time. Every part of the city is alive. But you're the only one listening to its heartbeat. And it's getting faster. You meet with a contact. He doesn't speak, just hands you a small stone wrapped in red thread. It's not a message, it's a confirmation. The kind that says, what you whispered in the dark has started to echo. Your role has changed. You're no longer an assassin. You're an operator. You still carry a blade. You still know how to vanish in 6 steps or fewer. But now, your actions ripple outward. A decision made in a tavern turns into a resignation in the capital. A suggestion, murmured in an archive, becomes a scandal 3 cities away. You've become what they feared, and what they needed. The system built to control the future has handed you the pen, and you're rewriting it, one name at a time, one silence at a time. You reach the rooftop just as the sky turns violet. Below, the city exhales, unaware. You sit. Let the wind run through your cloak, and for a moment, you just breathe. You survived. You changed. And now, you wait. Not for orders. Not for permission. Just for the right moment to act. So now, as the night deepens and the candles burn low, you settle into stillness. The streets outside drift into quiet slumber. Somewhere a door creaks. A dog barks once, then nothing. Just the hush of a world that keeps turning, unaware of the shadows guiding its spin. You lie back, feeling the slow weight of exhaustion soften your muscles. Every breath sinks you deeper into the floor, into the quiet, into the space where names no longer matter and masks fall away. Your fingers trace the edge of the ring. Cool. Familiar now, not heavy. Just present. Whatever comes tomorrow. Whatever. Alliances shift, whatever rulers fall. You'll meet it with steady hands and open eyes. Because now you understand power isn't noise, it isn't thunder or flame or iron marching in rows. It's stillness. It's patience. It's a quiet voice in a candlelit room, asking the right question at the right time, and changing everything. So you close your eyes. The room fades. The world softens. And sleep, long delayed, begins to wrap around you like a forgotten friend. You earned this rest. And whatever comes next, you'll be ready. You always are.